Welcome to Tech Talk Live, a rundown of technical ideas and topics to help improve your knowledge of all things Comrex and general tech in the world of broadcast and content creation. Here's your host, Chris Crump.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to episode number 3 of Tech Talk Live. I'm Chris, and all of us at Comrex are really glad that you could join us today. We are streaming live on our Comrex pages on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, and you can send us your questions and comments to be read live on the air, so please do that. Today we're going to be talking to Jason Ornelas from Bonneville International. We're going to be talking to Bay Area broadcast legend Mr. Bill Ruck, and we're also going to learn about the key differences between Comrex Opal and our new subscription service called Gaggle. But to start things off, let's ask a techie. So Comrex customers depend on our techies to get the most out of Comrex products and even to make them do things that they didn't know that they can do. Today we're going to be talking to Eric Stableline, otherwise known as E4. He's going to join us and discuss pushing an Icecast feed from an Access NX rack. So here's the big question. Why do we call you E4? The simple answer is we've got like 7 Erics at Comrex, and we can't keep you guys straight. And you're the 4th one in there. So E4, welcome to Tech Talk Live.
Good morning, Chris.
So how are things up in lovely Devens, Massachusetts?
Well, the weather's a little lacking, but I'll take it. Anything that isn't shovelable is a good thing.
Very nice. So obviously our devices are full duplex codecs for doing remote broadcast, but they can also be used as a streaming server for feeding an Icecast feed. Can you tell us a little bit about how that works?
Yeah. It's a bit different from our typical Comrex to Comrex connection. It uses a different protocol, HTTP. So there is some setup first to just get the codec ready to talk via that other protocol. And then you would be setting up a profile to pick the right encoding, just like you would with a regular connection, and then a remote that points to the actual service that you're connecting to. You would
I'm
need
curious,
to get...
you get a lot of tech support calls about setting up, Icecast. How often does that occur to you? Is it a pretty common thing that people want to use this for it?
Yeah. We covered multi-streaming, and that's a great way for a Comrex codec to send to a few other codecs to receive a stream. But for when you want to actually get your audio out to a wider number of people, you really want to use a content delivery network, like a streaming service, that can have the internet connection that's able to feed, far more than you would typically get through like a studio's internet connection. To get out to a wider market.
So what are some of the things that people have to be careful of when they're setting up an Icecast or Shoutcast feed? I know there are some gotchas. Can you give us those?
Yeah. This is more true a while back, but a lot of the services had really just done MP3 encoding. And we have a lot of better encoding algorithms, but we didn't do MP3. So fortunately, that's changed. So there's plenty of services out there that can do the AAC encoding or even the Opus encodings that we support. So that'll give you, better than you could expect from MP3. So it's important you find a service that can support the kind of audio that our units can feed.
Okay, so let's say that I'm a Comrex customer. I want to be able to feed like my streaming server. I've got a Bricklink or an Access that I can use for that. How long would it take me to set that up if I were to call E4 and get the expert tutelage on it?
Yeah, it's really only a couple of minutes. You would need to get the information from the streaming service. There are certain very particular things that are, again, a bit different from what you do if you're connecting with another Comrex device. There's a source and a mount point, and these are really just pieces of information that would be communicated by the streaming service that match up with what they're going to expect from you.
So What else do I need to know? I mean, before I call Comrex to get some information on how to set up my access or Bricklink to do a streaming service, what is the information I need to gather so I'm not taking up too much time of our valuable techies?
Yeah, I mean, really, if you have whatever you've received from the streaming service, as far as what they're looking for, it's pretty much going to be a copy and paste. You're going to take the information they've provided and just put it into the proper fields to set up a remote that's going to make a connection to that service. So it's really only a few minutes, and we can certainly help with that.
Okay, and if I'm going to be feeding something like Stream Guys or another one of these content distribution networks, what kind of bandwidth do I need on my access or my Bricklink to feed that on typically?
Well, I mean, our worst case would be like 2 megabits upload, and that would be for a linear PCM audio stream, which is really overkill for a lot of this. You'd typically be using a fraction of a megabit to send upstream to the service, because they're the ones who are going to be handling the heavy lifting. They're the ones who are going to push a stream out to not a few like our multi-streaming would, but to hundreds or thousands of people connecting up to pull that same audio feed.
And I believe I just saw a link to maybe a white paper that has some setup instructions that are real basic and simple. Did my eyes deceive me?
No. We've got that right up on our website. We have links to connecting to Icecast and Shoutcast servers up on the pages for our various codecs, and that document really lays it all out. It has screenshots, so you're going to see exactly what you're going to see when you go to actually put that information in the codec.
And of course, for those that don't like to read words on paper or on the computer, they can always call our techies and get excellent support, and you guys can read it to them. Our number is 800-237-1776. I'm sorry, I just had to say that. It's somewhat smarmy, I know. But that's what our tech support's there for reading the manual to people. Anyway, hey, Eric, thank you very much. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk about Icecast and setting that up on an Access or a Bricklink. I'm going to let you go back to answering the phones and helping people out. I hope you really have a great day.
Thank you, Chris. I hope you do as well, and I hope our listeners out there do too.
All right, man. Thanks. So, Comrex audio contribution products like Opal and Gaggle share some common DNA, and specifically something called WebRTC, which is Web Real-Time Communication. But they also have some key differences. And today, we're going to talk about some of those differences in our feature focus. And I just have to click some buttons and do some stuff like this, and I'm going to do that. And let's see, let's start out here. We're going to go up, 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 up. Okay, so Opal and Gaggle are what we refer to as WebRTC appliances, or WebRTC communication tools. They use a common web browser, and those common web browsers have the tools to be able to connect to these services. In the first case, we have Opal, which is a hardware box. Basically, think of it as a WebRTC server in a little chassis. It has the capability of getting HD quality audio from a cell phone or a computer. It supports two discrete channels, so input and output. So you could have those dedicated to two separate studios, or you could actually feed them into a console, give each one a mix minus, and you can have them on the air at the same time. As I mentioned, it uses the Opus encoding algorithm, which is a really high quality, very low latency algorithm. And essentially, it's a WebRTC server all in one box. It does have some IT requirements. You have to have a static IP address for it. You have to be able to forward a CNAME record to it. There are some things that are all explained in the manual. There are some enterprise solutions that might not be able to use it because of some IT requirements. But if you're considering Opal, please give us a call and we can talk to you about how all that works. Opal is very simple. You basically go into the back end of it and you create a guest link with Opal, and you'll send that to a guest. When they click on it, it's going to automatically open up a Chrome or a Firefox or whatever your default browser is that supports WebRTC. And then you hit the connect button, and that's pretty much it. You have a big green connect button. A lot of times you might have the logo of the radio station. You have a little VU meter. Once you connect, it goes directly to the Opal box. And if you have a good quality headset plugged into your PC or your smartphone, it's going to sound like you're sitting right there in the studio. So the next thing we have is a relatively new service that we came out with recently called Gaggle. Gaggle is like Opal in that it uses a common web browser, but it's a Gaggle in that it supports up to 5 contributors simultaneously. It is a subscription service. It's billed either monthly or annually. It does use that common web browser, Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox. I think Microsoft Edge is supporting it, but we do have some favorites. And the big difference is instead of having a dedicated appliance like the Opal box, it's using a cloud server. So you don't have to have that static IP address and all the configuration stuff that Opal has. So it's a little bit more simple for anybody that doesn't have an IT professional. Very simple IT requirements for it. And it will connect to an access, a Comrex access, or a Bricklink IP codec. So if you already have one of those in the studio and you want to be able to take in up to 5 contributors or even just 1 contributor, you can use Gaggle with an access or a Bricklink. You can use it on a smartphone. So you get that link, you click on it, and it just opens up the Gaggle interface. Up to 5 people will have their audio all joined together. So it's basically an internal mix minus. And then when the moderator is ready to connect, he or she will just hit connect to codec, and it connects to the Access Bricklink. You're joined with the studio. Everybody's happy. And the big thing is it's HD quality audio, not really tinny, low quality telephone audio. And it's a big game changer for getting your talent on the air. So instead of spending a high dollar codec and to a talent in the field, you can just send them a link. It's great for contributors. It's great for reporters. At NAB this year, we have kind of a new feature that we're going to be introducing to Gaggle, and it is called Gaggle Hotline, or Gaggle Plus Hotline. I'm not going to say much more about it. I'm going to leave it there. You need to come by our booth. It's going to be C2234 in the Central Hall, and we're going to show you what Hotline with Gaggle is all about. We're pretty excited about it. We think you will be too. And I just have to get out of that little screen there. Okay, so many buttons, so little time. So Gaggle Plus Hotline, the new intro, the new reveal at NAB, and we hope you will join us in the Central Hall and you'll take a look at it. There are a lot of great tools that can be used to enhance Comrex products, and during the recent pandemic, our customers had to get very creative to switch to working from home. Jason Ornelas oversees the West Coast radio stations for Bonneville International, and he had to make that magic happen, and he is here today to tell us all about it. So let's bring Jason on. And Jason, how are you doing today?
Yeah. Hey, first, thanks for having me. During the pandemic, we all thought it was just going to be a little 2-week thing. So we weren't thinking like a long-term, elegant solution. As things kind of went on, we realized, okay, we got to get a little more clever and creative and build something that's going to be future-proof, also dummy-proof, and make it something that's a turnkey solution for all of our on-air talent that we're no longer coming to the offices, to the studios, the facilities. And we knew Roadcasters really well. We knew Comrexes really well. And we're like, hey, how can we marry these two to make, our product, our on-air product, be what it would be to the quality as if they were in the studio. And it really came about where we kind of bought a Bricklink, we bought another Roadcaster, we bought some cables, played with it. How can it integrate well? Was that to go for automation system? How can it bring it up on our consoles with Wheatstone? And it really became one of those things where it's like, we kind of had made a studio in the box, no pun intended. And it really, it would kind of just blossom from there. And next thing you know, we're doing all 6 markets, at 30 orders plus per market to get these kits. That really was a microphone, a cable, a mic stand, a Comrex Bricklink, and a Roadcaster.
Do you remember that initial talking, that call you had with engineering? How did that all go down, and when did that happen? Do you remember?
Yeah, I think we are all just thinking like, okay, how long is it going to go on? It was one of those unknowns, for all of us. And it came through like, we think we have a solution. We vetted it, we tested it. Our local chief here in Sacramento, Joe Foth, really gets all the credit for kind of figuring this out and kind of putting the brains behind it all. And then we filmed a little video of, as detailed as plugging this XLR into mic one input of the Roadcaster. So anyone who was just given one of these kits at the door as like a drive-by, like, hey, take your kit, go home, record, do your show. We made it so detailed where my mom or anyone can really watch this video, open it up, and figure out, okay, what do I need to do? How do I do it? And it just became one of those really elegant solutions that really streamlined our process during the pandemic.
And let's face it, I mean, talent are not the most technically savvy people, so it had to be very simple. It had to be kind of a Fisher-Price wiring diagram. And, you guys inspired me to actually create a video, and you actually loaned me one of your Roadcaster Pros to do the video. Big difference for me was I was able to use Studio Hub connectors, which I really, really like. And I kind of outline that in the video. Oh, let's see if I can get that on the, okay. Yeah, so you can go an 1/8" mini that goes to the cell phone jack, and then you can do like a XLR to go into the BrickLink. And one thing that I should do is show people that if you want to see the video that we have, you can actually go to this neato little link, Comrex.com news in our video section, and you'll see a thing that says Tech Talks Roadcaster Pro. So Comrex.com news section under videos, and you can see the video. So I have to thank you and Joe for helping me out with that, and it was a great idea. How did your talent kind of absorb that whole process?
I think they got comfortable for sure working from home and having, just to press one button and turn everything on and start doing their shows. And it was really pretty flawless. All of our engineers, all of our talent throughout the company really embraced it, very, very minor hiccups. And it was all something that was really streamlined. It really just proved, the quality of, with the Comrex gear as well as the Roadcaster and people that were familiar with products, it really just blended really well.
Do you still have people that are using it from home still? Are they still broadcasting from home and like, I got this Roadcaster, I got a Comrex, I don't have to come into the studio?
No, but we do have some people that will do some extra shows or voice tracking for some other stations or markets with it. And also, I think it's a good experience, a good tool for us to be like, hey, let's not forget how to use it. I know it's very turnkey. We still have the video available, but we want to make sure that if we ever have to do that again or any kind of emergency again, it's easy and we're not trying to train people on it. So most jocks and talent still have some. Most have been brought back to the offices and the facilities throughout the company.
Well, I mean, you do have these beautiful facilities all over the country, and you might as well use them, right? You paid a lot of money for them, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. The beautiful studios. And there's nothing like being in a studio. Me personally, I'd rather be in a studio, but workflows definitely have changed with the pandemic. I remember when I first started, I had that maroon box from you guys, the Vector, and who thought things would change from Who thought the Vector would change and evolve into all this and where you guys are at now? So things are going to evolve, and we just kind of roll with it.
Well, listen, Jason, I appreciate you taking the time out of your very busy schedule. I know you're overseeing all those stations on the West Coast and projects all over the place, but I appreciate you joining us today for Tech Talk Live, and we'll look forward to seeing you out in Las Vegas at NAB.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and looking forward to seeing you in Las Vegas.
So if you're involved in radio and tech, not unlike myself, you're probably a nerd. Bill Ruck, I don't want to call you a nerd, but I mean, he for all intents and purposes is, because he's been involved in radio since he was a kid. And like many of us, he's always been fascinated with radio and all aspects of it. Bill, actually, I know that you're you're a veteran of the Navy, is that correct?
Navy.
Yeah, so I don't know if you knew it or not, but our founder, John Chaney, was an RF guy in the Army, and Comrex was built on all of his experience from the Army. And oddly enough, we're located on an Army base in Massachusetts. And thank you for your service, by the way. And thank you for being here today on Tech Talk Live. And today we're going to talk a little bit about not so much your RF stuff. Well, kind of. Your volunteer work with the Maritime Radio Historical Society. So, how did you get involved with that? I'm curious about that.
Well, it's a kind of one of those stories. One of my high school buddies, Steve, worked for RCA downtown San Francisco while he was in school. And when he graduated, he went to work for RCA full time. And shortly thereafter found himself as a teletype operator in Point Reyes. And so I used to go in the early 70s, go up and visit and hang out with Steve while he was working. And so I actually was in the facility when it was in full operation in the early 70s. So it was whenever a mutual friend started trying to recruit me, it was really, really easy because he didn't have to explain anything. I said, yeah, been there, done that.
So, do you know Morse code? Is that something that you learned as a kid?
Actually, I've been rhythmically challenged my entire life. I had a complete Collins station in my home from my father's W6 VSY, and I got through about the first half dozen letters and then got frustrated, and that's been like that now for 70 years, or 60-some years. Anyway, so I now hold W6 VSY because that's my father's call, but I'm able to do that because of no-code licenses.
So can you tell us a little bit about the history of maritime radio service? I mean, it goes way, way back before all of us were born. But obviously it's kind of interesting. It was really important to shipping back in the day.
One of the things that people don't realize today is that ships would sail from port and then 3, 4, 5 weeks later show up, or they wouldn't. Ships were routinely lost at sea, all hands, and with no clue. They just never showed up. So the maritime industry was really the first to fully embrace then wireless communications because they found it very useful. I mean, certainly to be able to call and say, hey, we're sinking, that's very important. But also they found out that, hey, I'm approaching port, contact the port, find out what berth I'm supposed to go to, or contact the port and say, hey, I need 100 pounds of potatoes and 100 pounds of coffee and some flour and sugar and whatever, and have it all ready for them. So for convenience as well as safety, radio became critical to the maritime industry more than 100 years ago, 120 years ago.
What frequencies were they using back then on that service?
We would call that very low frequencies, and originally in the tens of kilocycles. It's gradually, as the industry evolved and technology evolved, they moved up into the medium frequency and high frequency bands. But originally, they were really, really long waves.
Yeah. So, when we talk about this, I know we have Port Reyes and there's another one on California, but these were all over the United States. And in fact, not too far from where we're located, there was a station out on Martha's Vineyard, I think. And there were a couple all along the eastern seacoast, all the way up to Newfoundland.
Oh, yeah. No, actually, just in San Francisco, we had RCA, KPH, we had Mackey Radio, KFS, and we had a couple of other stations, one of which was a private station owned by a shipping company. So there were, just in the Bay Area, I think there were 4 maritime coastal stations.
So I have to say, I didn't know that much about the Marine Radio Historical Society until I went to the website, radiomarine.org. A lot of historical transmissions took place in a lot of shipping incidents that are very famous in history. I had no idea.
Well, and it was kind of transparent to most users, because if you weren't involved in maritime radio, you wouldn't even know it kind of existed. But we do have posted for visitors to see the actual KPH log from December 7th, 1941. A copy of that log is posted for people, and I can point out that there was a message, hostilities with Japan commence. That was a pretty historic day. Most of the communications were routine. We're going to port, we're coming in, we're doing this, we're doing that. And every, several times a year, there might have been an SOS with a problem, but most of the time it was pretty boring routine communications, all of which was necessary to make it efficient.
200 pounds of potatoes.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't feed the crew, you have a real problem. So that was an important part of what we do.
So I have a really short attention span. You might have already told me this. How did you get involved with the MRHS?
Well, a mutual friend, and it's another long story, which I'll skip over, but a mutual friend was trying to recruit me. And since I already knew about it, and I've already been there, I was there with Steve a long time ago. It really wasn't that hard. And so my interest in the history of technology overlapped my knowledge of making radio work and transmitters and everything else. And so it wasn't difficult. It was actually almost too easy to get me involved. And I've been involved now for more than 15 years.
So those transmitters.
So I go out every other Saturday, more or less.
For example, are they still using tubes? Are the transmitters at point?
Oh, yeah.
Are they still? Yeah.
Yeah, we will. And people are welcome to visit, and I'll explain later. But we have a PW15 transmitter which was a press wireless transmitter. It's a standard Army and Navy transmitter during World War II, and it was built for the Army in, I think, 43. It'll be on the air every Saturday. We have a bunch of 50s vintage RCA transmitters that are routinely on the air, and even our more modern Henry transmitters still use a couple of tubes. So we're firmly entrenched in the past.
So, Bill, how many of these in the heyday, back in like the early 1900s, 1920s, how many marine radio stations were there throughout the United States?
Oh, I would guess 50 or 60. West Coast, East Coast, and Gulf of Mexico all had dedicated stations just for that purpose.
And how many exist today?
One. At least in terms of Morse code 1. Which is our station KPH.
Because now everybody uses satellite, I suppose, for communications and.
Today, if you're on a ship, you send email via satellite, so it's very modern, state of the art. I mean, the requirement for having a radio officer on board a ship to send Morse code ended in 1999.
Wow.
And ship owners immediately eliminated radio officers.
Not a skill you would put on your resume anymore, I guess.
No. But now it's an electronics officer, and he takes care of the communications, and he takes care of the entertainment systems, and he takes care of some emergency communications that are still required, and everything else that plugs in and lights up and goes beep on board a ship.
Well, one of the things that's cool about MRHS is you involve kids and some adults that are kids in some contesting and gaming on a regular basis, so they can, practice their Morse code chops, right?
Well, we have several vintage ships, Liberty and Victory ships that'll send us messages on Saturday because they can. But we're trying to do more than just send Vs, which was an internal joke for Net Industry. But one of the things that we've stumbled into is that we have been sending encrypted messages for people to monitor off the air and decrypt as a challenge to them. Amateur radio is not allowed to send encrypted messages, but in the maritime industry, it was routine to send encrypted messages because maybe you didn't want the competition to know that your ship was doing something. So it was very common to send encrypted messages, and it's perfectly legal in the maritime industry. So a couple of months ago, we sent a message that was a Soviet era, Cold War era numbers message that was encrypted with a one-time pad. And we had over 150 responses to that. So we'll be doing this summer an Enigma encrypted message, and we're trying to find out something else to be challenging later in the year. So we like to do at least 2 encrypted messages a year for enthusiasts to listen to us and decode whatever we have, and they get a nice certificate when they do that.
Well, Bill, that's awesome. I have to say that I'm amazed at some of the coding that I hear, some of the Morse code that I hear on the website. that's so fast and so clean and so precise. If you go to radiomarine.org, you can hear some of those transmissions. It's a really fascinating site. There's some great pictures. There are some great volunteer opportunities. If you're ever in California, up in the San Francisco Bay Area, Point Reyes is a really fascinating place. I think everybody who's involved in radio should visit it. And I wish we had more time to talk because this is such a cool topic. And I think I appreciate you coming on to talk about it today.
Let me talk real fast. If you're interested in maritime history and be here, go to radiomarine.org, contact us and say, hey, I'd like to come out and get a visit. The receive site in Point Reyes is open to the public, noon to 4, most Saturdays. The transmitter site in Bolinas is not open to the public, Park Service regulations, but I can say you're all invited. Now I've complied with Park Service, and then we'll set up a tour and make sure that you go away impressed.
And it's definitely a beautiful building, and it's I think we were talking about it. You were surprised when you saw it and all the gear that was in there. It was like the day they had walked out the door. It was still there. So
we had to dust it off.
You guys have done a great job.
Okay, thank you.
Bill, thank you very much. Appreciate you being here today. Unfortunately, that's all we have time today. Just want to let you know that our next Tech Talk Live is going to be Friday, April 26th at 11 a.m. Be sure to mark your calendar because it's going to be a post-NAB wrap-up. So if you're planning to join us at NAB, make sure you join us in the Central Hall, C2234. We have a couple of big reveals, and we think that it will be pretty cool. So please make sure you join us. I would like to thank Eric from Techies today, Jason from Bonneville for talking to us, Mr. Bill Ruck with the Marine Radio Historical Society, Grace and Julia from Comrex, thank you very much for all your help with Tech Talk Live. Big shout out to Mr. Dirk Freeman Jr. from Steelboy Productions for his technical assistance, which we couldn't do without him. And thank you very much for joining us today with your comments on Tech Talk Live. We will see you next month. I just have to remember how to push all the buttons. And let's do this one. Have a great day.
Thanks for joining us on Tech Talk Live. If you have a topic you'd like to hear more about or a question for Ask a Techie, send it to ttl@comrex.com. And be sure to visit comrex.com for more information on Comrex products and services.